Kristen, is the court's abortion pill decision a big deal or a little deal?
It's a big deal in that it takes the issue not completely off the table. But had they ruled in a different way, and were this pill not available, this would be a massive political firestorm for Republicans in the fall. The fact that the Supreme Court ruled the way it did and ruled unanimously, I think, is very important because it will really take the heat off of a lot of these, I think especially Senate candidates whose job would be to confirm justices. They would be getting asked a lot more questions about this issue that they probably don't want to answer.
Kara, it seems to me that there are two questions here. First, sort of the policy question about access to abortion, and then how the issue plays out in the campaign. On both of those aspects, is this decision a big deal or a little deal?
I think Kristen's right. It takes it off the table. It calms things down a little bit. But it isn't really the end of it in any way because it's about standing. It's not the actual thing. It's a thing about the thing. And so in that way, it's a little deal. But they can come back again and again. I mean, Melinda Gates just tweeted about that, said this is not by any means the end of this because they'll come back with more.
I have to say, this whole question of standing, which is whether somebody has a right to sue because they've somehow been harmed. Justice Alito apparently famously said, so what's it to you? That's standing. So you have to explain why it is to you. You were shaking your head at Kara's answer.
Both of their answers, actually. I think it's a big deal because, not for the reasons that they say, but because actually, yes, it takes it off the table for now, but we have cases in Idaho, Kansas, and Missouri that have mounted challenges. The people that brought this case, the ADF, who have been really pushing this, have said that they, didn't get to the merits of the case, and they are very excited about what might be coming down the pipe. So this is far from over, and I think that message is going to be playing out over and over for Democrats.
I would argue there's another reason why it doesn't take the issue off the table for the campaign, and that is because of the fact that if President Trump is elected, he'll be in charge of the FDA, and he could pick somebody who would just say, you know what, mifepristone, it's not safe, we're going to tighten it up, or we're going to take it off, and it'll still be an issue in the campaign. I want to turn to another subject, which is Justice Alito and that secret recording where he was asked about the polarization between the right and the left. Here was his answer.
A way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised.
Reihan, is Alito a culture warrior?
I don't think he is in his role as a Supreme Court justice. There was one passage in that secret recording where he actually explicitly referred to his role on the court. And he said that, look, these big cultural questions aren't the court's business. That's above our pay grade. What he was doing was dealing with someone who's trying to bait him and, frankly, trying to placate the person and trying to move the conversation along. I really don't think there's much to see here other than that, yeah, he's a faithful Christian who is concerned about polarization and the state of the country. And he, like anyone else who pays any attention, is anxious about how rancorous our cultural debates have become.
Lulu, Alito at one point said either one side or the other, the right or the left, is going to win. Same question. Do you think he's a culture warrior? And if he is, how do you explain his vote on the abortion pill decision?
I think I explained his vote on the abortion pill decision because it was on a very narrow bit of law, which is about on standing. So I don't think it speaks to the merits as the people on the right have been citing. And I think he is a culture warrior. I think it is very difficult to separate the way that he has ruled on the bench and the way that he sounds in this recording. I'll also say I don't believe and I don't like when people are secretly recorded. I don't think it's fair. So I don't approve of the methods here. But I do think that it's fair game to understand the thinking that animates the decision-making of these very, very important figures.
Well, it takes us to our next question, Kristen, which is, what did you think of the secret recording by a liberal activist posing as a conservative activist at a private event? Did that offend you?
Well, I agree with Lulu in that it doesn't sit right with me. That I think when it comes to folks who are in the public eye, I like the idea that they're being held accountable. But I think there are ways to hold people accountable and to learn about their views that don't have to be like that. When I was very young in Washington, I remember getting to hear a talk from then the late Justice Scalia, all about his views on things like search and seizure. And it was very interesting and illuminating to me. And I feel like justices are just going to stop doing that sort of thing altogether in this new climate.
But, you know, Kara, it's interesting. On the one hand, would I have done it? No, obviously I wouldn't. But on the other hand, it was fascinating. It was on the front page of every newspaper in America, the lead of all newscasts. Are justices fair game?
I do think they are. I didn't have as much problem with Project Veritas or any of them in that way, if that's what they're going to do. And this particular person had a really interesting history of doing this. I think it's fine. They should be very careful what they say in public, or it should match with what they say in private. It seems like, in this case with the Alito stuff, he says a lot of this in public in his rulings and everything else. So I wasn't shocked by the difference.
I have to say, Kristen, what was so instructive, and we saw it in our piece, was this was not a hard question to answer, and John Roberts answered it the right way. He said, we don't get into those questions of being moral or taking the country towards godliness. We decide cases. I mean, it was a softball question, and he missed it.
Well, it's clear that Roberts was on guard, and rightly so. It's clear that Chief Justice Roberts knows the world that he lives in, and Alito let his guard down a little bit, and he will, I almost certainly believe, not let his guard down again.
I'm sorry, guys, but many of you have been in public forums where you're dealing with people asking you very persistent, frankly tiresome questions where you just want to placate them and move on. What I heard from Justice Alito was simply him saying, I agree with you. Wouldn't it be great if we were all living in a much godlier country? I think it's really that straightforward.
No, I never want to placate people and move on.
That I believe, Kara, that I believe.
Since November, I've learned that.
Especially on issues like this. I mean, this isn't someone asking you casual things now. Hey, how are you doing? How's it feeling? They're asking you issues about the law and something very, very important. And so it's ridiculous to think that he was trying to placate that person.
Staying with the justice theme, jurors found Hunter Biden guilty after just 3 hours of deliberations. Now the question is, should he get jail time? Also ahead, crisis and concern. The arrest this week, which could make the immigration issue even tougher for President Biden. And later, stop payment. No, we're not talking about checks, but you may need one when you see what some cities are doing to slow down drivers. You're a fast driver.